Hey, folks, welcome on into the Locked on MLB Mock Draft. I'm Lindsay Crosby, host of Locked on MLB Prospects. He's Jeff Ellis, host of Locked on Guardians. And together we are alternating for the first Locked on Mock Draft of the year. So the way this will work, I have the odds, Jeff has the evens. We are doing this mock as if we are these teams. So we're going to give you our picks. We're going to give you our justifications. What am I forgetting, Jeff? We good?
We're doing it as what we think the teams are going to do today, correct? Or are we doing our big?
Yeah,
okay.
No, yes. We are doing, yes. This is what the teams are going to do. So, if you are, say, the Mets, you are going to draft a guy and then not offer him a contract and let him go back into the draft. Like, that's the thing you're going to do. So, all right, first pick. So, I am the Baltimore Orioles. And with the first overall pick in the Locked On Mock Draft, and this was tough for me, but I am taking Druw Jones, the outfielder from Wesleyan. And we were talking before the mics came on. There's a lot of conversation about, one, Baltimore so often has gone under slot with a college guy and saved that money for something later. And for those of you who are new to the MLB draft, the analogy there is like trading down in the draft. Okay. You can take a lesser talent here, save the money, and get a better talent later. I think that in this class is just lacking in like that top end talent. And I think if you this is one, go ahead and get the player versus trying to take in the quantity, because you have a good farm system. And the point that you made is we don't have a ton of middle infielders in this system. So absolutely could have seen something like a Jackson Holliday here. I really considered that. And then it just came down to me. I think that Druw Jones is just has better top end potential here. I think if he develops the way that he's projected, the most optimistic projection is, perennial all-star type player. And that's just something I don't think you can skip over at one.
No, yeah, I agree. He's kind of put himself in that top group. And the last time we've really had a guy who was in, head and shoulders, it was, Adley. So they when they had top talent, they took top talent, that kind of sleeper guy there. I wonder if it's Jackson Holliday because of the lack of any up the middle talent in that system. Yeah. But I get that. Moving on to the second overall pick, Arizona, outside of the 2020 draft, if you put that one to the side, they have always gone of late ceiling and upside. They have been one of the teams that we see that ceiling and upside with. And you kind of go back to that 2020 draft, and if I'm looking over here at their top prospect list on Fangraphs, you don't see any of those names in there. So it hasn't necessarily worked out for them with that class. So I think they're going to go for ceiling. When you look at this group, I think everyone agrees there's a clear top 6 talent. You selected one, so we have 5 names left. And for me at this point, it comes down to Jackson Holliday and Elijah Green. And Green has the bigger tools. I think most agree. He is the toolsier player, but would they have a preponderance of outfield prospects, but they also took Jordan Lawler a year ago. So going back and forth a little bit on that. But here's the thing. I look at their top prospects, Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, Jordan Lawler, athletes. So I'm going to go with Elijah Green here. He was supposed to be the guy in this class, and I don't necessarily think it's a knock on him that he isn't. I think it's just we saw too much of him. It's hard for anyone to carry it as long as he carried it. So for me, I think just knowing Arizona, knowing ceiling is their thing. I think right now the biggest ceiling is Elijah Green. What are your thoughts on that? Is he the big ceiling guy right now as well in your mind?
That makes sense to me. And I think it's something where it's like you said, one, it's hard to carry that for the entire draft season. But I get it. And I think the athletes that they have, they can move a guy if they feel like they have too much at one position. They can move a guy to a different spot on the field. I think it'll work out okay. I like that pick. I think I'm good with that pick, Elijah Green there too. For me, we narrowed down that group of 6, right? And I know that the Rangers, and my listeners have heard this already once before, but like in the first round, I don't worry as much about a position of a guy. I'm not worried about, like, say somebody's going to take Kevin Parada, and if somebody takes Kevin Parada and they have a catcher, a star catcher prospect already, I'm not worried about that because first round talent kind of overrules a lot of that. So they have a lot of middle infield prospects. They have 2 guys signed to a ton of money to play the middle infield. But I still think for the Texas Rangers, I'm taking Jackson Holliday here. Something where we've seen multiple guys from the organization going out there, getting multiple eyes on him. I think the left-handed swing would fit in nice with the lineup. Great athleticism, good hit tool, good power tool. Jackson Holliday is the pick for me.
Yeah, my one thing all I've heard is high schoolers connected with them. My one resident retinant, I can't say the word. My one concern with that is I don't think they have drafted a high school prospect high since Cole Winn and Owen White. Now both of them are top prospects, but I will say that's if you want kind of a sleeper heading into that, one of the college guys could be. But again, that goes against everything that is being said. So I totally get why, and again, shortstops rise. If we're going to continue, we talked about trading down. The quarterback of the MLB draft is the shortstop. They always rise on draft day. Brings us to Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh hit it out of the park last year. We were talking beforehand. Like I had Henry Davis number 1 on my board because of the flexibility he provided financially, as well as his ceiling. They're building things up there. And when you look at this class, I think, I know one could look at Parada and be like, oh, they took a catcher a year ago. Now, remember, San Francisco took Joey Bart, Patrick Bailey back-to-back years. It doesn't really mean anything. Teams always need catchers. There's always value in that. But I still think the top college player is Brooks Lee. I had a late first-round grade on him out of high school. He checks all the boxes. Like, he's got good walk rates, good strikeout rates. He's excellent in terms of his contact skills. Son of a coach, playing for his dad at Cal Poly, young for the class, I want to say as well. All those little things stand out. Now, he has been beat up from time to time. That's a concern. And yeah, he's a shortstop who's probably going to play third or maybe second. But he just hits. He plays well. I think he's a safe player. And I think kind of looking at this grouping, I could be wrong here, but I think he might also be cheaper than Parada just because of positional value and the thought that he's not really a shortstop. So I'm going to go with Brooks Lee because I still think he's the top college player, and I think Pittsburgh will lean college here.
Yeah, and I just had a crossover with Ethan of Locked On Pirates the other day, and I think that this Pittsburgh team has the ability to compete sooner rather than later, and I see Brooks Lee as a guy who could probably move pretty quickly through your system and be able to contribute. So I like the Brooks Lee pick. At 5, I feel really bad for Mike Rizzo because we know Mike Rizzo loves a good college pitcher, and there's just not college pitchers at 5 in this class. There's nobody to take.
May not be one at 25.
But exactly. And so I'm like, I feel bad for this guy. I mean, that's the thing that he does. But but kind of projecting off of that, he still likes the college players, the proven college players. Positional thing is weird here, but I'm going to give him Kevin Parada, the Georgia Tech, the catcher. And this is something, again, first round, I don't necessarily worry too much about doubling up. Obviously, you have Keibert Ruiz there. Plus, I'm not 100% convinced Kevin Parada will end up eventually at catcher. But I think he's something, if he's able to stay back there, you think about a guy who's, 40 homer potential, could hit high 200s, 280, 290. One of the more complete bats in the class. Sleeper, you probably could have gone with a third baseman like a Cam Collier or something, but I think Kevin Parada is probably the pick here.
No, I've kind of had that or Lee locked in there. It depends on, how things play out or, it's just kind of, my one rule with Washington is they like sliding talent, but they're picking 5. So it's hard to say who the sliding talent is in this class when you're picking 5. Miami, speaking of teams that jumped on sliding talent recently, Khalil Watson a year ago. And, I know this year it's been a bit of a slow start for him. It's kind of the knock, but I think they took just the best talent on the board. And when you go back and you look at guys like JJ Bleday, Max Meyer may not have been the top guy on the board, but he's certainly played well enough that I don't think anyone's really debating that. They are a team that isn't afraid to take risks, like with Dax Fulton in that 2020 class. So I think just looking at them, they are picking sixth. It is a 6-player draft. Termarr Johnson may not have a position. He might be a second baseman. He might be a first base. He might be a DH. What we do know is he can hit. Like he is probably more than the other prep players in this class. I think he's the safest bat. Like those other players have more of a defensive ceiling. They have other tools, but I think he has the safest bat. I think he's the one you look at from this prep class. Like it's going to be surprising if he doesn't work as a hitter. We can debate where he ends up positionally, but just as a hitter, I have no concerns about him. And I think, again, when you're picking 6, unless someone like Baltimore does something crazy, which they have done, you're just sitting back and seeing who's left. Yeah.
And it's something where like immense pitching depth there. So you have to think, and plus not a great year for pitchers in the first place. So I get it. It makes total sense. I like the pick. I think in that case, you're looking at a guy like flipping around here, the Cubs at 7. I'm probably going to take a Cam Collier.
I agree.
It's a 6-player draft. If number 6 doesn't go to 6, to take him at 7. It's kind of just falls in your lap. And it's something where, he's for a young player. He's got a lot of tools. Plus hit tool, very good eye at the plate. I see him as probably a 30 home run guy. I think they probably would have taken Termarr Johnson if he was there, but he's not. So take Cam Collier.
My comp on the podcast when I released my big board last week was Cabron Hayes. Like that's son of a big league third baseman.
That's
the power. One. I think there's some room for that, but I agree. That's exactly who I would have taken there. So I don't have really a coda or anything else to state, except for to move on to my selection, which, I'm sitting here at 8 with the Minnesota Twins. For a second, I forgot I was evens and I was afraid I was the Royals, and I don't want to get into the mind of Drayton Moore. So Minnesota is interesting because they the head of the front office came from the Guardians. Mm-hmm. They had a very Guardians-like approach, and then they started to shift, and they would take a lot of college talent. Like Royce Lewis was a very Guardians-like pick. Trevor Larnach and Alex Kirilloff, not as much because those were corner guys. And then last
corner guy.
Yeah, corner guy. And then they took Chase Petty, who was kind of shocking for a team that really is not invested in pitching, let alone prep pitching last year. So I feel like anything's in play with this pick. Just going through though, like you're connecting the lines and what they've done. You look at Sabato, you look at Brent Rooker, you look at a team, Trevor Larnach, like one could argue this is a team that loves to draft DHs. And when you got Jackson Berry sitting there, who to some, Jacob Berry, to some, this is a 7-player class, not a 6-player class, but a 7-player class. And he is up there in that group to some people. So as a team that has not been afraid to draft a DH, for a team that has looked at offense first and then everything else second, I think he just makes sense. I think at this point on the board, he fits style, approach, and just general league consensus value.
Yeah. And a guy that I've seen reports talking about 70 hit tool, possibly power, 60 or so. Which if you kind of project out as something like a 300 hitter with 30 home runs. So, that would be that'd be fantastic. I don't necessarily know where he plays, but I don't think they care. You got corner outfield spots, you got first base, you got DH. They'll find a place to put him. I do get to do the Royals pick here, and I'm very excited about that. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Rock Auto. There are so many makes and models of cars. It is virtually impossible, Jeff, to figure out for like the local store down the street to have the parts that you need. So you're going to go in there. They're going to ask you all those questions. Hey, like, is this an LX or an EX? Is this a sport package or not? All of that stuff just for them to tell you, oh yeah, by the way, we don't have the part. We can order it for you. Skip all of that. Save the time. Save the money. Go to rockauto.com. You can save 30%, 50% off of the same part you would buy at a chain store or a car dealership. Because Rock Auto is a family business that has been serving DIYers for over 20 years with reliably low prices for every single customer. So go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. I really have no idea what Dayton Moore is going to do.
They're going to take Robert Moore, right? This is going to be like when Kenny Williams drafted Kenny Williams Jr. and gave him an obscene bonus.
It's the nepotism. Yeah. No, like I've been telling myself I was not going to do that pick. I was not going to do that. So
my thought is like after Franco Mazzucato, I've been kind of leaning into the Robbie Snelling of it, but I have no idea there.
Yeah.
Outside, I mean, it's what have they? When was the last time they didn't take a pitcher? It's just been it's just pitching city there, and they can't develop any of them. So it's almost like a comedy of errors right now with Kansas
Yeah.
City.
And I'd love to give him a pitcher, but it's just something where like not really, there's not a pitcher who's worthy of a top 10 pick right now. It's just not in this class. So I think I'm going to go a little bit outside of the box. I'm going to give them, they've got some heralded infielders. Obviously, Bobby Witt just got called up, things like that. I'm going to give them somebody for the outfield. So I'm thinking, especially after the postseason that he's having right now, Gavin Cross, the outfielder from Virginia Tech, going to the Royals at 9. I feel like it's a little early for this, but at the same time, I think he'd have been great for the Twins at 8, honestly, but I can't think of who else. The Royals are going to do something crazy, and until I can predict that, I'm just going to go with what I think is the right thing to do, and then let them prove me wrong.
Yeah, I don't. They're kind of all over the place, and it's like I said, it's just been the fact that they keep drafting arms, but they have. It was like in our group chat, I made the joke about. I think it was with the Royals. It's like there was a trade occurred and someone asked you like, hey, can I get some information? And there's me being a jerk and very snidely like, well, hey, he's coming from the Royals. That means he's got some development left in him just because
they just don't develop pitchers. I don't know why. It's like they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it.
And the one thing we know is they won't draft any pitcher under 6'3". So that's the one thing if they do go pitcher, you can just start eliminating like Dylan Lesko would have never been in play to them.
Nope.
But too short. So yeah, it's
they discriminate against short kings is what they do.
So I which is funny because wasn't Ventura like an undersized guy for them before he unfortunately passed away? Like wasn't he not a big pitcher? Maybe I'm wrong, but in my mind I'm thinking he was not the biggest guy.
I think he was shorter. Yeah, you're right.
They had success and then they ignore it. But going from one kind of depressing minor leagues on a bad team to a second depressing minor leagues on a bad team, Colorado Rockies, an interesting team for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so everyone who knows me, for those who don't, who are just used to Lindsay, I used to write at Scout. I used to write at 24/7 as a draft prospect analyst and draft analyst. And I do a lot of like deep digging. And I sat there and it was something like almost a decade before Zach Veen that they had like last drafted a prep player, but now they've gone, prep players, high ceiling types in back-to-back years. And, Drew Romo, I was kind of surprised when they were able to sign him. I thought like I had heard he was going to college, but he's actually turned out to be one of their better recent selections.
Yeah. So
when you look at like who's available at 10, like I'm just kind of looking at like who are the ceiling guys. And I feel like someone who is rising, and we can talk about just throughout this list already. It's like Druw Jones, who Andrew Jones, Brooks Lee's dad being a Cal Poly coach, Jackson Holliday, Matt Holliday, Elijah Green, Eric Green, Cam Collier, Luke Collier. I think and there's so many other like guys lined up for this, so you can't even necessarily guess. But I think Justin Crawford from Bishop Gorman in Nevada, son of Carl Crawford, fits with Benny Montgomery and Zach Veen, is that like ceiling athlete, power potential. There are some concerns, but that's also a really good developmental high school, and that stuff matters. Mm-hmm. You talk to teams, they know, like, okay, he went to, no, this is bad. I'm blanking on the California school that teams love to go to because they always, do such a nice job. Teams know certain programs coach up his bloodlines, his power, his size. I think if they're looking for another guy in that vein, and if you're like 3 years in a row with an outfielder, the minors have nothing in it. Let's be honest. Like it's not a good minor leagues. So if they sit here and take another one, it's not like that's setting them back because they're already all the way in the back.
Yeah, that's a good one. It kind of leaves me, the Mets are in a weird place here, right? They like the super athletic guys. I feel like the super athletic guys at this point have been taken early, but it's too early to take, to go out there and get some sort of pitching, some sort of pitcher yet. I guess he's sitting there. It's not what Epler likes to do. Like I'll acknowledge that Billy Epler likes the super athletic dudes. But I think that they're probably going to save, they're going to try to save a little bit of money. A guy, a cornerstone, you look at what they need right now at the big league level, a guy like a Jace Young, third baseman from Texas Tech. Someone where I honestly thought like he'd be a good fit at 10. So I think he ends up going at 11. And it's simply because there's not that super athletic Justin Crawford type left right here. This is just kind of that shallow area of the draft. So Jace from Texas Tech going to the Mets at 11.
I think it's a solid pick. Like, I mean, even up to the Twins, I think he could be in play. So I think, and to me, he's the best player left on the board. So I totally get all of that there. The Detroit Tigers are very interesting because they have never drafted a shortstop in the first round. Or no, that's not true. They've drafted two. One of them being Scott Moore, and then I'm blanking on who the other one was. This is what I like to tease my Tigers friends about. That like every year, we heard last year they were all about Marcelo Mayer. They were like that was number one on the board. No way he's there, and then they pass. So. There are some interesting shortstops here, but I'm just immediately going to look past all the interesting shortstops because they do not draft shortstops. And when I look around at what is kind of left on the board, they do like big, hard throwers. And then you got the kid from Michigan right there and Brock Porter, who fits their style. Now, they have not taken a lot of prep talent since Dave D left. They've been kind of a little more college-y. I know they took Jackson Jobay. And they took Riley Green. But I mean, in terms of, there's been a little bit more of a college lean. But I think in this case, the guy who's been in their backyard, they can scout all year, who to many people is a top 10 talent and fits their model. And let's be honest, they've been actually really good at pitcher development. Love him or hate him. Look what Tarek Skubal's doing this year. Casey Mize hasn't been as strong, but he took a step forward last year. Manning, they've been good at developing arms. So why not lean into that?
Yeah, I mean, local guy there. And then on my thing, I also think this is probably the first place where somebody genuinely considers, like here, 12, 13 is where somebody thinks about Kumar Rocker.
Agreed.
Probably, this is probably it. He had one start under his belt. It looked good in the start from what I've heard. But I think this is probably the cap of where people start considering a Kumar Rocker. I've got the Angels at 13. Before I do that, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. Do you love chewy, chocolatey brownies? What if it was What if it was a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? Yeah. So you can have all of that chewy, chocolatey deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein because the caramel brownie bars are available at Built.com right now. You have to act fast, limited time thing. These do sell out. They are a fan favorite. But these are better than dessert for you. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar. Just replace a regular brownie with Built's caramel brownie bar and you're good. 100% real chocolate. You're not sacrificing taste for your health. There's a million reasons you should be eating Built bars, but like this will rock your world, and not an understatement. It's guaranteed to rock the earth that you stand on. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 at Built.com. Is it just me, or does this one feel like it's kind of easy? It's the Angels, so they're probably going to take a pitcher, and they're probably going to take a college pitcher because they took 20 pitchers last year. 19 of them were college pitchers. They signed 18 of them.
And one of them's in the big leagues this year.
One of them's in the big leagues already. Yeah, Jay Silseth is already up. So Gabriel Hughes, righty from Gonzaga. I mean, I know that there's guys that they would think about. They'd probably think about a Susac or something like that. But it's just, Perry Manassian's going to take a pitcher here. He did that. He took 20 pitchers last year. He's going to take one here because that's what they need. So Gabriel Hughes from Gonzaga.
I just want to take a moment and give you credit because I see a lot of people going halfway on the analysis with the Angels and being like, okay, they took a lot of pitchers. Let's give them one of the many prep arms that makes sense here. But it's like, no. Exactly what you said. They took 19 out of 20 college pitchers. Yeah. Just want to give you some credit for doing the analysis that I don't see a lot of people doing. So,
thank you.
Hey, tip of the cap, because that's something that annoys me when I see it. So I'm just going to point it out when I see someone doing it. It's being a teacher. I'm like, good job. Keep it doing.
Positive reinforcement.
It's what I preach all the time. But yeah, no. So I think that's something a lot of people are missing when they talk about it. Now, 14, we're back to the Mets.
They get rewarded for not giving a guy a contract last year with another pick.
I'll say this, though. This is my defense. I locked on Guardians. You can see it in the corner here. The Houston Astros saw bad things in Brady Aikens x-rays and chose not to sign him. That netted them Alex Bregman and Daz Cameron with the money savings they had. That trade then netted them Verlander by having Cameron. So and if the medicals are bad, I don't know what it is. Unless I can see the medicals, I don't know. The Guardians then made the mistake of drafting Aiken, and he was out of baseball because it was that bad. So until I can see, I will stand. I'm not necessarily saying what the Mets did was right, but as we discussed before on the air, what Boston did was even worse with Jude Fabian in the second round, where they just ignored his bonus demand. With Kumar, at least it was like the Mets got scared by medicals.
Yeah,
and
I'll give them that.
So
Valid.
that's my one statement to kind of give them a little bit of credit. But I think at this point in time, you're looking at the Mets, you're looking at boards, you're looking at value. Would they take when you got 2 first rounders, does it make sense to go and risk a Dylan Lesko right here, who probably would be considered like one of the top 7 talents in a normal draft class? They could also consider Susac. And I'm not going to be scared off about the fact that like their top prospect, or one of their top prospects, I should say, is also a catcher because he's more of a defensive type and Susac's more of an offensive type. It's just back and forth because we are at this point where it's like there is that top 7, and then for me, there's like 4 more guys, and then the next 30 are all about the same. This next group of 30 could go any way. But if you're talking about ceiling, you're talking about upside, you're looking at that type of guy. Cole Young probably is the ceiling player right here. Now, it might surprise people, but again, shortstops rise. I really like Cole Young, though I actually have Jet Williams higher in my personal rankings. But because Williams is so small, that is going to take a big leap of faith that I don't have the belief that the Mets would be willing to make. Daniel Susac is a really interesting guy playing in an extremely hitter-friendly environment. And I think we have seen so many recent Arizona guys like Kevin Newman, like Scott Kingery, not quite translate. That you can put up big numbers in the desert doesn't always mean the same thing. You can face really bad Pac-12 competition as well. So I think he's getting a little overvalued. I think he might slide a bit more than people are expecting because I think teams are very knowledgeable about park factors right now.
Right.
So when you go and you look at Cole Young, the Pennsylvania shortstop, has potential plus power, above average hit, good athlete, can handle the position. Shortstops always rise. Looking at their system, Ronnie Mauricio, I've always viewed as more of a second baseman. Maybe that's just me and my own internal head.
Not just you.
So they don't. Yeah, and I know Francisco Lindor has the contract that never ends, but shortstops always have trade value, and you can make it work. And with his power ability, if you move in his arm, he could end up playing third in the future. So it'll balance out. But again, for a guy who went and got Joe Adell, who was not afraid of a few negative things and went for ceiling, I think Cole Young makes a lot of sense for ceiling here.
I like it. That kind of tracks for me, and no notes. I'm good. Yeah, that works. You explained it pretty well. All right. 15 Padres. AJ Preller has spent a lot of time. Like they like preps. They're not afraid to take a hurt kid. So, and then they like the athlete guy. So I think of Jet Williams. I think of Dylan Lesko here. I think this is a good fit for Lesko. If he doesn't go 14 to the Mets, I like the idea of extra first round pick. We can take the risk. We can double up. Plus, it would give the Mets an actual homegrown pitcher, unlike what they have now. But here at 15, I think the Padres are probably going to do the same thing they've done before. They've got arms. I think they're probably going to go Dylan Lesko. This is something where they're going to recognize the value. They've not been afraid to do this before, to take a hurt pitcher, let him rehab. And then you have a guy, he just fits in as a prep pitcher, just like they took Mackenzie Gore as a prep pitcher, Ryan Weathers, Justin Lang. Like, he fits in with that. So I think this is where Dylan Lesko falls to, and he stops falling here.
No, I could see that. I think this is also like one of the good prime places for Kumar Rocker's name as well.
True.
That's my only side note. My other question is, do we do a cliffhanger for the Guardians fans and stop here and then do the first pick for next time?
Of course we do.
That's got to be the way to do it. To Guardians fans who listened to this whole time, thank you. It is, good draft coverage. I will be fair, and in the title say that we're only going to 15 in the first half, so nobody gets too mad at me. But yeah, I think it's a good time for a cliffhanger. And while we didn't talk about any Ohio kids here, we might talk about an Ohio kid in the second half of this mock. You'll have to listen, and see if Uniontown, if Miller breaks in here or not.
Look at that cliffhanger. Jeff, where can folks go to find you and all of your stuff and your pod?
You can find me at Locked on Guardians, wherever you find Locked on Guardians. And then my Twitter is at Jeff MLB Draft, based on the, my previous job as a draft and prospect writer. And then look forward to our big draft show this year. I'll start hyping that now. I did it last year with RM. It'll be a lot of fun to do it with Lindsay this year, and we'll have it covered this year. I hope we can do the full 3 hours. I know at the end of last year we kind of petered out a bit, but I'm looking forward to having a full 3 hour show as long as Lindsay is able to do that. I will say I'm not going to wrap anyone else. I mean, I'm the fool who in 2020 did a 3 hour draft show one-on-one. You can find the YouTube on my personal YouTube channel. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not great, production value. It was before we were doing any YouTube here at Locked On in my my second year at the network. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. My show Locked on MLB Prospects is available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And we will finish this draft tomorrow.